My name is Caleb.
What are you
I'm
thinking
28
about?
years old, and for the last 3 months, I have
How
been
I
watching
don't
a
want
woman
this
try to
moment to
rebuild her
end.
life with a sledgehammer. Her name is Elena. She's 45, recently divorced, and she bought the old Victorian on Elm Street, the one with the sagging porch and the rot in the floorboards, because she needed a project. She told me on the first day, standing in the dusty foyer in her pristine high heels, that she wanted to strip everything down to the studs. "I want to get rid of the rot," she had said, her voice tight. "I want to start fresh." I knew she wasn't talking about the house. I'm the general contractor. My job is to fix the wiring, replace the drywall, and make sure the roof doesn't cave in. My job is not to notice how her eyes look when she thinks no one is watching. My job is not to want to pull her into my arms every time she sighs over a paint sample, but I'm terrible at my job. Tonight, the line I had drawn in the sawdust finally disappeared. It was 10:15 p.m. I was at home, scrubbing drywall dust off my arms in the shower, when my phone rang. Elena, client, popped up on the screen. She never called at night. She was strict about boundaries. I answered on the first ring. "Elena, is everything okay?" "Caleb?" Her voice was high, bordering on hysterical. "Caleb, it's everywhere. The water. I can't make it stop. It's ruining the floors." "I'm on my way," I said. I didn't ask questions. I threw on a t-shirt and my boots, grabbed my tool bag and jumped in my truck. I made the 15-minute drive in 7. When I pulled up to the house, the front door was wide open. Lights were blazing inside. I ran up the steps, dodging a pile of lumber on the porch, and sprinted into the kitchen. It was a war zone. A pipe under the sink had burst, likely old iron that had finally given up the ghost. Water was spraying out in a violent, icy jet, hitting the opposite cabinets. The floor was already an inch deep in water, and sitting right in the middle of it was Elena. She was on her knees, desperately holding a towel against the pipe, trying to hold back the flood with her bare hands. She was soaked. Her expensive silk blouse was plastered to her skin, translucent and clinging to her curves. Her dark hair was wet, matted against her face. She looked up when I ran in. Her mascara was running down her cheeks. She was shivering violently. "I can't stop it," she sobbed, the spray hitting her right in the chest. "I'm trying, but I can't stop it." "Move," I shouted, dropping my bag. I waded through the water. I didn't bother with the towel. I reached past her, grabbed the main shutoff valve under the sink. The one I had shown her last week, but she had panicked and forgotten, and wrenched it clockwise. The spraying stopped instantly. The silence that followed was deafening. Just the sound of water dripping from the countertops and Elena's jagged, gasping breaths. I looked down at her. She was still kneeling in the puddle. She looked defeated. The water had ruined the new hardwood we had just laid down yesterday. It had ruined her clothes. It had ruined her composure. "It's ruined," she whispered, looking at the floor. "Everything I touch, it just breaks." She buried her face in her wet hands and started to cry. Deep, heart-wrenching sobs that shook her shoulders. I looked at the mess. I looked at the water damage. It was bad, but it was fixable. Then I looked at her. She was shivering, cold, and convinced that she was a failure. She had no idea how she looked to me. She had no idea that even covered in dirty water, with her makeup smeared and her defenses down, she was the most stunning thing I had ever seen. I couldn't stand there as her contractor anymore. I knelt down in the water beside her. My jeans soaked through instantly. I didn't care. "Elena," I said, my voice low and rough. She didn't look up. She just kept crying into her hands. "Elena, look at me." I reached out and took her wrists, gently pulling her hands away from her face. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide, green, and terrified. She was trembling from the cold water, her teeth chatting. "I'm a mess," she choked out, trying to pull away. "Profound, don't look at me, Caleb. Please, I look hideous." "You don't look hideous," I said firmly. I let go of her wrists and took off my dry flannel overshirt. I wrapped it around her wet shoulders, pulling it tight to trap the heat. "You look like you're drowning," I said softly, tucking a wet strand of hair behind her ear. And I'm not going to let that happen. She stared at me, clutching the flannel. The warmth of my shirt seemed to shock her out of the panic. She looked at my face, really seeing me, maybe for the first time, not as the guy with the hammer, but as the man who had come running. The floor, she whispered, shivering. To hell with the floor, I said. We need to get you dry.
I helped her stand up. It wasn't graceful. The floor was slick with water and dish soap, and her heels skidded on the wet wood. She grabbed my forearms to steady herself, her nails digging into my skin. She was freezing. I could feel the tremors running through her body, vibrating right into mine. Come on, I said, keeping a steadying hand on her waist. Upstairs. The master bath is finished. The water is still on up there. My kitchen, she stammered, looking back at the disaster. The cabinets. The drywall. I'll fix it, Elena, I said, steering her toward the hallway. That's what you pay me for. I can replace drywall. I can't replace you if you get hypothermia. She stopped fighting me. She let me lead her out of the wreckage, up the stairs, leaving wet footprints on the runner I'd helped her pick out 3 weeks ago. We went into the master bathroom. It was the first room we had finished, a sanctuary of white marble and gold fixtures. It was warm in there, quiet, far away from the chaos downstairs. I sat her down on the closed lid of the toilet. She looked small, wrapped in my oversized flannel shirt, her knees knocking together. Stay, I ordered. I walked over to the massive soaking tub and turned the tap. Hot water roared out, steam instantly starting to fog up the mirror. I grabbed a stack of thick white towels from the shelf. I turned back to her. She was watching me. Her eyes were still red, but the panic was fading, replaced by a deep, heavy embarrassment. She pulled my shirt tighter around herself, trying to hide. I'm sorry, she whispered, staring at the floor tiles. Stop apologizing, I said. I am, she insisted, her voice cracking. I'm 45 years old, Caleb. I ran a company for 10 years. And here I am, calling my 28-year-old contractor in the middle of the night because I couldn't handle a leaky pipe. She looked up at me then, her expression bitter. I'm pathetic, she said. I dropped the towels on the vanity. I crossed the room in 2 strides and crouched down in front of her, just like I had in the kitchen. You're not pathetic, I said fiercely. You're overwhelmed. You're living in a construction zone alone. You're human. I reached out and took her hands. They were ice cold. I rubbed them between mine, trying to generate some friction, some heat. And you didn't call a contractor, I added, looking her right in the eye. You called me. She went still. The air in the bathroom got heavy, filled with the sound of rushing water and the steam curling around us. I didn't know who else to call, she admitted softly. Everyone else? They just see the divorcee who made a mistake buying this money pit. They're waiting for me to fail. I'm not, I said. I squeezed her hands. I think you're brave, I told her. I think watching you fight for this house is the most impressive thing I've seen in a long time. Her breath hitched. She looked at my mouth, then back up to my eyes. The walls between us, client and contractor, older and younger, were getting thinner by the second. She pulled one hand free and touched my face. Her thumb grazed my jawline, rough with stubble. You're soaking wet, too, she noticed, her voice dropping to a whisper. Your jeans, your boots. I'm fine, I said. I'm used to the cold. You should go, she said, but her hand stayed on my face. You fixed the pipe. You should go home. I'm not leaving until you're warm, I said. I stood up. I walked over to the tub and turned off the tap. The silence rushed back in. Get in the bath, Elena, I said, keeping my back to her to give her privacy. Get warm. I'm going to go downstairs and shop vac the water so the floor doesn't warp. But I'll be right downstairs. I waited for her to tell me to leave, to tell me I was crossing a line. Instead, I heard the rustle of wet fabric. "Caleb?" I didn't turn around. "Yeah?" "Thank you," she said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "Don't thank me yet," I said, walking toward the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I haven't fixed the floor." I walked out and closed the door behind me. I leaned against the wall in the hallway for a second, closing my eyes, listening to the sound of her stepping into the water. I was in trouble. Deep trouble. Because I didn't want to be downstairs fixing the floor. I wanted to be on the other side of that door. The shop vac roared in the empty kitchen, drowning out the sound of the rain against the windows. I worked like a machine. I sucked up every gallon of standing water. I dragged the soaked rugs out to the back porch. I set up 3 industrial fans I had in the back of my truck, angling them to dry out the baseboards before mold could set in. I was exhausted. My jeans were heavy and cold against my legs, and my boots squelched every time I took a step. But I didn't stop. I needed the work. I needed the noise. It kept me from thinking about the woman upstairs in the bath. "She's your client, Caleb," I told myself, hauling a bag of wet debris to the door. "She pays the bills. She's 17 years older than you. She's out of your league." But then I'd remember the way she looked in my flannel shirt, vulnerable, shivering, and looking at me like I was the only person in the world who could save her. And all the logic fell apart. I finished the cleanup around 11:30 p.m. The kitchen was loud with the hum of fans, but it was dry. I leaned against the granite island, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if she was okay. Wondering if I should just leave a note and go. Then I heard the stairs creak. I turned around. Elena was standing in the doorway. She wasn't wearing my flannel anymore. She had changed into a pair of soft gray lounge pants and a white tank top that clung to her curves. She was dried off, her skin glowing from the heat of the bath, smelling like lavender soap and rain. She had brushed her dark hair back, leaving her face bare. She looked incredible. Not rich client. Incredible. Real incredible. Voluptuous and soft and undeniably woman. She was holding 2 glasses and a bottle of wine. "It's loud in here," she said, raising her voice over the fans. "It needs to be," I said. "Airflow is the only way to save the wood." She walked over to me. She moved differently now. The frantic energy was gone, replaced by a slow, tired grace. She set the glasses on the island and poured the dark red wine. "I thought you might need this," she said, sliding a glass toward me. "Since you saved my house." "I didn't save it," I said, taking the glass. "I just stopped the bleeding." "That's enough for tonight," she murmured. She took a sip, her eyes traveling over me. I was still a mess. Damp clothes, sawdust in my hair, mud on my boots. I felt rough and dirty standing next to her in her clean kitchen. "You're still wet," she noted, frowning slightly. "I'll dry off on the drive home," I said, taking a sip of the wine. It was expensive. It tasted like berries and smoke. "You're not driving home like that," she said firmly. "It's freezing outside, Caleb. You'll get sick." "I'm fine, Elena." "You're not fine," she countered. She stepped closer. She was close enough that I could see the pulse jumping in the hollow of her throat. "You're shivering." She was right. The adrenaline had worn off, and the cold dampness of my clothes was sinking in. "I put your flannel in the dryer," she said, "and I found some old sweats in the guest room closet. They might be too short, but they're dry." She hesitated, looking down at her wine glass. "Please," she whispered, "don't just leave. I don't want to be alone in this house with the noise of those fans." That was the hook. If she had asked me to stay for a drink, I might have said no. If she had tried to pay me extra, I would have walked out. But she admitted she was lonely. I looked at the fans whirring on the floor. I looked at the dark windows. Then I looked at her, this beautiful, powerful woman who was terrified of the silence. "Okay," I said, my voice dropping low. "I'll change." She let out a breath, her shoulders relaxing. A small, relieved smile touched her lips. It hit me right in the chest. "Go upstairs," she said softly. "Guest room is on the left. I'll be right here." I set my glass down. I walked past her toward the stairs. As I passed, my arm brushed against hers. The contact was electric. I walked up the stairs, knowing exactly what I was doing, and knowing I was absolutely past the point of no return. The sweatpants were too short. They hit me about 3 inches above the ankle, and the t-shirt stretched tight across my chest and shoulders. Whoever owned these before was smaller than me. I looked at myself in the guest room mirror. I looked ridiculous, but I was dry and I was warm. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and walked back downstairs. Elena wasn't in the kitchen anymore. The noise of the fans was too aggressive. I found her in the living room, sitting on the velvet sofa, her legs tucked under her. The only light came from a single floor lamp in the corner and the glow of the streetlights filtering through the bay window. She looked up when I walked in. Her eyes swept over me, taking in the bare feet, the tight shirt, the undeniable reality of me standing in her living room at midnight. She didn't laugh. Her gaze lingered on my shoulders, then moved up to my face. The air in the room grew heavy and hot instantly. "Better?" she asked softly. "Much," I said. I walked over and sat on the opposite end of the sofa. I kept a respectful distance, 2 feet of velvet cushion between us. It felt like a mile. She picked up her wineglass, twisting the stem between her fingers. "I hate that kitchen," she said suddenly. I wanted to rip it out the day I moved in because it reminded me of the house I lived in with him. And now, it fights me every step of the way. "Houses are like people, Elena," I said, leaning forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "They have memory. You can't just paint over it. You have to strip it down and rebuild it strong." She looked at me, her expression guarded. "Is that what you think I'm doing? Rebuilding?" "I think you're trying to prove something," I said gently. She let out a bitter laugh. "I'm trying to prove that I'm not obsolete. My husband left me for a girl who is 24, a girl who doesn't have wrinkles, a girl who doesn't have baggage. He traded me in like a used car." She took a large swallow of wine. "And now here I am," she whispered, gesturing to the dark room. 45, alone, flooding my own kitchen because I'm too proud to ask for help. The anger flared in my chest again. Not at her, but for her. "Stop it," I said. She blinked, surprised by the sharpness of my tone. "He didn't trade you in for a better model," I said, my voice low and rough. "He traded you in because he was weak. He wanted something easy. You aren't easy, Elena, you're real." I shifted on the couch, closing the distance. I couldn't stay on my side anymore. "I see the way you work on this house," I said. "I see how much you care. I see how you look when you're frustrated and how you look when you laugh. You aren't obsolete." I stopped right next to her. I could smell the lavender soap again. "You're a masterpiece," I whispered. Her breath hitched. She set the wineglass down on the coffee table with a trembling hand, afraid she might drop it. She turned to face me. Her eyes were wide, searching mine in the dim light. "You're just saying that," she breathed. "You're 28, Caleb. You should be out with girls your own age. You shouldn't be here with me." "I am exactly where I want to be," I said. I reached out. My hand felt large and rough against the silk of her skin as I cupped her cheek. "I don't want a girl my age," I told her, my thumb brushing her lower lip. "I want a woman who knows what she wants." She leaned into my touch. Her eyes fluttered shut. "I don't know what I want," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm scared." Then let me show you, I said. I didn't wait for her to pull away. I didn't give her time to overthink the age gap or the client contract. I leaned in and kissed her. Her lips were soft, tasting of wine and hesitation. For a second, she froze, like she couldn't believe this was happening. But then, a low sound vibrated in her throat, a sound of pure need. She didn't just kiss me back, she melted. Her hands came up, grabbing the tight fabric of my t-shirt, pulling me closer. The distance on the couch vanished. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her voluptuous body flush against mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was the crash of a dam breaking. It was months of stolen glances and professional politeness being incinerated in seconds. She tasted like trouble. She tasted like the best thing that had ever happened to me. I pulled back just an inch, both of us gasping for air. Her eyes were blown wide, her lips swollen. She looked stunned. "Caleb," she whispered, her hands still gripping my shirt. "Tell me to stop," I challenged her, my voice dark. "Tell me to go home and I will." She looked at me, at the hunger in my eyes, at the man who had fixed her pipes and dried her tears. "Don't you dare," she said. And she pulled me back down. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping and the smell of coffee. For a second, I didn't know where I was. The pillow was too soft, the sheets too high a thread count. Then I shifted, and the memories of the night came rushing back. The flood, the wine, the velvet sofa, and eventually, the bed. I rolled over. The space beside me was empty. My stomach dropped. Regret. It was the first thing I thought of. She had woken up, seen her 28-year-old contractor in her bed, and realized she had made a terrible mistake. I sat up, dragging a hand through my hair. I found my t-shirt on the floor and pulled it on. I walked out into the hallway, steeling myself for the "this can never happen again" speech. I walked down the stairs. The house was quiet now. The industrial fans were off. I turned the corner into the kitchen. Elena was there. She was standing in the middle of the ruined kitchen floor. She was wearing a silk robe, clutching a mug of coffee with both hands. She was staring at the warped floorboards I had tried to save. She heard me enter. She stiffened, but she didn't turn around immediately. "It's bad, isn't it?" she asked quietly. I walked over to her. I didn't stop at a professional distance. I walked right up behind her, close enough to feel her warmth. "It's not bad," I said. "It's just wood, Elena. We can rip it up. We can lay new tile. We can make it better than it was before." She turned around then. She looked tired, but beautiful. There was no makeup to hide behind this morning. Just her green eyes full of uncertainty. "I wasn't talking about the floor," she whispered. She looked up at me, searching my face. "Caleb, last night," she started, her voice shaking slightly. "I was vulnerable. I was a mess. You were kind. But in the cold light of day, look at us. You have your whole life ahead of you. I'm a divorcee with a money pit of a house." I reached out and took the coffee mug from her hands, setting it on the counter. "Stop," I said. I put my hands on her waist, pulling her in. "I didn't stay because I was being kind," I told her, my voice low and serious. "And I didn't touch you because you were vulnerable. I did it because I've wanted to since the day I walked onto this job site." Her eyes widened. "But the age, the work—" "I don't care about the numbers," I said. "And as for the work, I'm going to fix this kitchen. I'm going to fix the roof. And when I'm done with the house, I'm still going to be here." I leaned down, resting my forehead against hers. "Unless you want to fire me," I added, a small smirk playing on my lips. Elena let out a breath she seemed to have been holding all morning. A slow smile spread across her face. Not the polite smile of a client, but a real, happy smile. "I can't fire you," she teased softly, wrapping her arms around my neck. You're the only one who knows where the water shutoff valve is. Damn right, I murmured. I kissed her. It was slow and sweet, tasting of coffee and promise. The ruined floorboards crunched beneath our feet, and the walls were still stripped down to the studs. But for the first time since I started the job, this place didn't feel like a construction site. It felt like a home. Come on, I said, pulling back. Get dressed. We have a lot of work to do. On the kitchen? She asked. No, I said, grinning. I'm taking you to breakfast. The floor can wait.